Madam Speaker.
I call Camilla Belich.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well. Look where we are. A government which was elected on the promise of reducing the cost of living has set out its priorities very clearly. They put us into urgency last week, Madam Speaker, and we went through more legislation as a result. And unfortunately, it appears that the legislation has dried up. And so Chris Bishop has thought, as Leader of the House, don't worry, I'll just open my drawer entitled Pet Peeves. And this petty government has pulled out a repeal of a sensible bill and is wasting New Zealand's time and this House's time by repealing what is essentially a sensible bill that everyone agrees with. How interesting. How interesting that a government that says that it is focused on the things that New Zealanders cares about decides to bring up a grudge from the last Parliament that was particularly irksome to the Leader of the House and decide to waste Parliament's time on something that we all essentially agree with. And that is, Madam, it's not my job not to waste Parliament's time, Mr Costley. It's my job to hold the government to account. And I say, on behalf of New Zealanders, this is a waste of our time, and we wish that we had a government that would focus on the things New Zealanders really care about: jobs, health, homes, the cost of living. Instead, they are a petty, small-minded government are repealing a bill that does this, Madam Speaker. This is a good law, and I will tell the member opposite why it's a good law. It is clear that it is an important part of our democracy that government organisations and agencies communicate in a way that people can understand. This is an important democratic right. And Madam Speaker, I think we can all agree that we're at an important time in our politics, both domestically and internationally, where we should be focusing on the things that keep our democracy strong. And communicating in a way that is clear is essential to the participation in our democracy. I agree with that, those opposite agree with that, we all agree with that. The one thing that I would take issue with is not the content of the original bill, not the intention of the original bill, but the fact that those opposite decide that it is of such importance that only this part way through the first term, not even towards the end, they have run out of legislation and they've only decided to bring a petty repeal of a member's bill to the House, a member's bill which actually strengthens our democracy and actually makes it easier for people to communicate with their government and understand the things that are essential to them. Such a waste of time, Madam Speaker, to even have this before the House. And I want to pay tribute to Rachel Boyack. She was the member that brought this member's bill originally to the House, and it turned into an act. And let me tell you, the hypocrisy of this is just extreme, because what the government says and the reason that they're repealing this is it's not strong enough. They say that it has no legislative teeth, and the reason that they want to repeal it is because it's going to cut red tape. Well, Madam Speaker, this is work that public agencies should already be doing. They should already be focused on making sure they communicate clearly to the public. They should already be focused on making sure that the things that they do are easily understood by people in our democracy. And if I may reflect quickly on Rachel Boyack and the reason she brought this to the House, it was because as an electorate MP, she saw again and again and again issues that people had, maybe people who had recently moved to New Zealand, who had English as a second language, maybe people who were just confused by the writing that was so difficult to understand by government agencies and wanted to see something clearer. She was having to deal with that. She brought a bill to the House to make it clearer for New Zealanders so they knew what the government was doing with their taxpayer money, so they knew what the government's agenda was, so they knew what their obligations were. It was not, no matter what the other side says, it does not impose a lot of red tape. One of the criticisms is though legislative enforcement in a court of law. But still, this petty, small-minded government chooses to repeal it where they could easily be focusing on the things that matter.
Go, Camilla!
So when was simplifying language red tape?
I don't know. Maybe we could sit there and talk in some technical legally terms that won't know.
Yeah.
we need to sit there and carry the one over so we can make the GST sit there and work. And yes, according to paper, the paperwork says you should have been paid. Yes, you should have been paid. You should have been paid this. We understand you didn't, but we've got to work on the assumption that you were paid, so we're going to make that decision. Would you like to guess which government department I'm talking about?
Yeah, I mean,
working income.
Most people are not academics. They're not lawyers. They don't look at complex language and industry-specific jargon for shits and giggles, right? These are people who are working class people that are working long hours every day. They just want simple information that's easy to understand, right? So you have you have both versions.
Well, this is the thing. We're in a stage of everybody here in Aotearoa. People are trying to actually heal. We're all trying to actually heal and get through things. And I think that we're all going to work where we can. But when you're not doing well, you don't make good decisions. And when you're not doing well, you don't get up in the morning and go run a marathon and then go to university to check out what jargon or language or what that word means, do you? I mean, yeah, I don't even know what to say about it, to be honest.
Like, imagine, I mean, because my father used to work as an optometrist, right? So medical jargon, right? Medical
Yeah.
words. Okay, imagine if my father did not have to convey simply to patients what he was doing to them, and if he was using like really technical, industry-specific jargon that his fellow colleagues would understand, the patient would have a freaking meltdown.
That's a great example, Laura.
Maybe when he sees Penny Simmons' eyes, he needs to talk in technical jargon and go, but you just stood up to do about the plain language bill. I thought you understood.
But Sam, it's like, and then put it in reverse. Imagine if my dad used the plain language talking to other optometrists. They would look at him and go, what the actual fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
I want to ask this. Has your dad ever had to, because I do know optometrists can order blood tests, has he had to give information back to, do they get called patients or do they get called clients? I don't know.
Yeah.
That was outside the realm of a normal role of an optometrist. Like, I had a friend who had a blood test at an optometrist, and the optometrist had to give the news he had syphilis and wanted to know the name of his GP to forward all the data on, because it ended up at the optometrist, but the results needed to be with a doctor.
Yes.
Let me just tell you, when I get my eyes tested, I hope that doesn't happen to me, okay?
Yeah. Yes, this is why it's important to communicate correctly to the right people.
But then again, and that's a good point, Sam, are you a client or a patient? Because that determines, confidentiality as well. So we've got to be really careful on the reo or the language or the words that we're using, because with that comes other sort of responsibilities or directives or narratives. It's really important.
Yep. You can't use plain language with that kind of stuff. We're talking about legal stuff and medical stuff.
Yeah, and you don't want someone going, hey, guess what happened today? I found out that such and such had been on a party last weekend and caught more than some feelings, you know? So you want to make sure that, like, where you're going to specific places, that you're being looked after accordingly, professionally and ethically.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to our Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok.